Hey everyone. And let's be real, we all love a good story. But what happens when those stories, those facts we accept as gospel, turn out to be, well, complete bunk? We've all heard them, those historical myths that have been passed down through generations. Get ready for some serious myth busting because things are about to get interesting. Myth hash 1. The Great Wall of China is the only human-made structure visible from space. Let's kick things off with a big one. Literally. The Great Wall of China is one of the most iconic structures in the world. You've probably heard that the Great Wall of China is the only human-made structure visible from space. It's a popular belief that has been around for quite some time. But is it true? It's a statement that's as impressive as the wall itself, right? The idea that something built by human hands could be seen from such a great distance is truly fascinating. But let's dive into the facts, except it's not actually true. Despite its grandeur and length, the Great Wall cannot be seen from space with the naked eye. Sound effect, buzzer. Astronauts have confirmed that while the Great Wall is undoubtedly massive and awe-inspiring, it's not visible from space with the naked eye. They've tried looking for it, but it just blends in too well. Think about it. The Great Wall is long, sure, but it's also relatively narrow and blends in with the surrounding landscape. Its materials and colors make it difficult to distinguish from its environment. From space, it's pretty much invisible, especially when you compare it to other massive landforms. The vastness of Earth's natural features overshadows human-made structures. The myth likely originated in the early 20th century, long before space travel was even a reality. Back then, the idea of seeing the wall from space was pure speculation. The idea that it could be seen from space just added to its mystique. It made the wall seem even more magical and monumental. The myth gained traction over the decades, repeated in books, magazines, and even textbooks. It became a widely accepted fact despite lacking evidence. So, next time you hear someone claiming they can spot the Great Wall from orbit, you can hit them with some myth-busting knowledge. It's a great conversation starter and a fun fact to share. Sound effect, ding. Did you believe this myth before? Let us know in the comments. Background music starts, upbeat, low volume. If you enjoyed this myth-busting journey, make sure to like, subscribe, and share your own historical myths with us. Stay tuned for more fascinating facts and stories in our next video. Check out our other videos for more myth-busting fun. See you next time. Alright, let's talk Vikings. Those fierce Scandinavian warriors who sailed the seas, raided villages, and wait for it, probably didn't wear horned helmets. Yep, you heard that right. The image of a Viking warrior sporting a horned helmet is so ingrained in our minds that it's practically become synonymous with Viking culture. But the truth is, there's no historical evidence to support this image. Archaeological digs have unearthed countless Viking helmets, and none of them have horns. Artists might have added horns to their depictions to make the Vikings look more intimidating, more savage, more barbarian. The real Vikings were tough enough without needing any help from horned headwear. Let's tackle one of history's most persistent myths, the case of Napoleon's height. Was he a vertically challenged tyrant with a Napoleon complex? Nope, not even close. In fact, the truth is far more interesting. The myth that Napoleon was extremely short is so widespread that it's become a pop culture punchline. But where did this misconception come from? In reality, Napoleon wasn't short at all. He stood at a height that was quite typical for his era. He was actually around 5'6" or 5'7", which was average or even slightly above average height for men in France at the time. This was a respectable height back then. Napoleon's height was often recorded in French inches, which were slightly longer than British inches. This difference in measurement units played a big role in the confusion. When his height was converted to British units, it made him appear shorter. This discrepancy was enough to fuel the myth. British cartoonists of the time, always eager to poke fun at their adversary, seized on this discrepancy and ran with it. They exaggerated his height for comedic and propaganda purposes. But let's give Napoleon his due. He was a brilliant military strategist, a charismatic leader, and a complex historical figure. His legacy is far more significant than a simple myth about his height. Marie Antoinette, the last queen of France before the French Revolution. She's often remembered for her extravagance and her supposed indifference to the plight of the commoners. And what better way to encapsulate that indifference than with the infamous quote, "Let them eat cake," when told that the peasants had no bread? Except, here's the thing, there's no evidence that Marie Antoinette ever uttered those words. The quote itself had been attributed to various princesses and aristocrats long before Marie Antoinette's time. In Marie Antoinette's case, the quote became a powerful tool for her political enemies, a way to demonize her and rally support for the revolution. While Marie Antoinette was known for her lavish lifestyle, attributing this quote to her is a gross oversimplification of a complex historical figure. Okay, this one's a biggie, and it might come as a surprise to some, but contrary to what some might believe, the idea of a flat Earth has been debunked for centuries. The ancient Greeks, as far back as the 5th century BC, had already figured out that the Earth was a sphere. They observed things like ships disappearing hull first over the horizon, and the curved shadow cast by the Earth during lunar eclipses. The myth that people in the Middle Ages believed the Earth was flat is a persistent one, but it's simply not true. Educated people in the Middle Ages knew the Earth was a sphere. This knowledge was based on both classical learning and on their own observations. The flat Earth myth fit perfectly into this narrative, even though it was a gross distortion of history. Let's talk about Albert Einstein, the genius who revolutionized our understanding of physics and the universe. He's considered one of the most brilliant minds of all time, yet a persistent myth claims that he struggled in school, particularly in math, which is far from the truth. The story goes that young Albert was a terrible student, failing math and barely scraping by in other subjects, painting a picture of a struggling genius. But here's the reality. Einstein excelled in math and physics from a young age, showing exceptional talent and understanding. He was a top student in his class and even mastered calculus by the time he was a teenager, which, let's be honest, is pretty darn impressive and not something a struggling student could achieve. At the time, the school Einstein attended used a reverse grading system, where 1 was the highest grade and 6 was the lowest, which often led to misunderstandings about his academic performance. The myth gained traction over the years, fueled by our love for underdog stories and our tendency to humanize even the most extraordinary individuals, making them seem more relatable and less intimidating. The Salem witch trials, a dark chapter in American history, are often associated with images of witches being burned at the stake. It's a chilling image that's been perpetuated in popular culture, but the truth is, no one accused of witchcraft in Salem was ever burned alive. The primary method of execution during the Salem witch trials was hanging, not burning. Burning at the stake was actually a relatively uncommon method of execution in colonial America. The Salem witch trials were a tragedy fueled by fear, paranoia, and religious extremism. While no one was burned at the stake, the trials resulted in the deaths of 20 innocent people who were hanged as witches and several others who died in prison. We all know the 4th of July as America's birthday, the day the Declaration of Independence was signed, right? Well, not quite. While the 4th of July is the day we celebrate American independence, it wasn't actually the day the Declaration of Independence was signed. The Continental Congress actually voted to declare independence on July 2nd, 1776. The Declaration, which formally announced this decision, was adopted on July 4th, but wasn't signed until August 2nd, 1776. The signing of the Declaration was a momentous occasion, a symbolic birth of a nation. But the process leading up to that signing was a bit more complicated and drawn out. Over time, July 4th, the date printed on the Declaration, became synonymous with the act of signing it. Gladiatorial combat, a brutal form of entertainment in ancient Rome, is often depicted as a fight to the death. We imagine gladiators battling it out in the arena, with only one victor emerging from the blood-soaked sand. While gladiatorial combat was undoubtedly violent and dangerous, it wasn't always a fight to the death. In fact, most gladiators didn't die in the arena. Gladiators were valuable assets to their owners, who invested time and money in their training and upkeep. A skilled gladiator could fight in multiple contests, and their deaths were not the primary goal of these events. The decision of whether a defeated gladiator lived or died often rested with the crowd or the editor, the official who oversaw the games. Chastity belts, those infamous devices meant to prevent female infidelity, are often associated with the Middle Ages. But the truth is, chastity belts as we imagine them are largely a myth. Most historians believe they were either exaggerated novelty items or devices used for other purposes, such as medical treatments or even torture. In reality, controlling women's sexuality in the Middle Ages was more about social expectations and religious beliefs than about physical restraints. So there you have it. 10 historical myths debunked. It's amazing how these misconceptions take root and spread, often becoming more ingrained in our minds than the actual truth. But questioning these myths is crucial. It's about more than just getting the facts straight. It's about understanding the complexities of history and challenging our own biases. If you enjoyed this deep dive into the world of historical myths, be sure to subscribe for more videos like this one. Thanks for watching.